Today's Committee on Agriculture, Veterans, Broadband, and Rural Development for Wednesday, February 26th is now in session. How are we doing? It's good to see you guys here. We don't yet have a quorum, so I won't announce that yet. So if anyone wants to come up and join the Ag Committee, we could do, Senator Johnson, feel free. So I will announce that when that arises, but we still want to get forward in some of these conversations, members, and those of you who are here to present bills. Our intention is that every bill we hear today will be laid over for possible inclusion. Because of that, we don't need to vote, so let's just get to work. Today, we're going to hear from Senator Johnson, Senate File 469, Wolf and Elk Depredation Payments Appropriation. Then we're going to hear a presentation from our friends for Poultry Day on the Hill. And then you're going to have to listen to me give a bill, Senate File 1839, about a program to provide grants to prevent the spread of avian influenza. Then we'll hear a presentation from a company called Cellucomp, who are doing some fascinating, interesting things. Then we will hear two bills from Senator Lang that are on similar issues. So that's the agenda for today, everybody. Senator Johnson, first order of business is Senate File 469. Mr. Thompson and Mr. Peterson, could you please come up and join Senator Johnson at the desk? And then Mr. Laurie be on deck for when we're ready. So, Senator Johnson, to your bill, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. It is an honor to be up here again and present the biennial wolf depredation and elk depredation bill. This is one that I've been part of since I came to the legislature back in 2017, the first session, in which, whether it's cattle being killed by wolves in northwest and northeast Minnesota, or it's up in Kitson County where the elk really wreak some havoc on crop production up in that corner of the state. This is a way of compensating farmers and cattle ranchers across the state there for the damage that is done without doing, damage to the wolf herd, the wolf herds. Is that what they call them now? The wolf packs or the elk herds. So this is a bill that comes up. It's been used quite a bit, and now we're looking at those funds. And I just talked to Mark Abrahamson here, who runs that program, and he was saying that they're in a negative position right now. There are more claims than there is money in the fund itself. So our testifiers will talk a little bit about that as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for the opportunity to present this.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Let's proceed with some testimony. Mr. Thompson, if you would, please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, fellow committee members. My name is Jake Thompson. I am president of the Minnesota State Cattlemen's Association and a cow-calf producer from Barnesville, Minnesota, so just up the interstate here a few hours. I'm here today to testify in support of Senate File 469. Cattle producers are struggling greatly with wolf and elk depredation in northern Minnesota and need increased assistance to protect their livelihood. The Minnesota Department of Agriculture continues running out of funds to reimburse producers for loss of livestock, crop, and fence destruction. Currently, the Minnesota DNR estimates the population of wolves to be over 2,900 in the state of Minnesota. And according to the 2024 USDA Wildlife Services Wolf Conflict in Minnesota Management Report, there was over 252 calls for wolf conflict management assistance related to livestock, poultry, pet owners, and citizens concerned about public safety. Of this year's 252 complaints, it was the highest annually and much higher than the 10-year average of 174. Of the 252, 136 of those were verified wolf kills or injured animals, and of that, 128 were actually livestock and poultry. Cow-calf depredations continue to be the largest number of domestic livestock impacted by wolves. Livestock verified as killed by wolves in Minnesota eligible for compensation, like previously explained, from the Department of Ag. In 2024, they were allocated $175,000. The department had a total request of $187,942 in wolf claims. Producers simply cannot get reimbursed when there isn't enough funding for it to happen. Producers struggling in elk depredation is not in a good position either. The department continues running out of funds to reimburse fence and crop destruction caused by elk. We have farmers that have taken a financial loss this past year in 24, and just hearing from the House side, most likely where the DNR or where the Department of Ag get their annual update, most likely will not be reimbursed until 2026. On top of all that, current elk issues in the Northwest farmers are facing, the DNR is also working on relocating some of that herd to the Fond du Lac tribe in northeastern Minnesota. So now we're concerned that there'll be more damage and once again, higher raising depredation claims that will not be able to be paid. The Minnesota State Cattlemen's Association is requesting increased funding for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture wolf and elk depredation funds. We feel that the increasing funds is just common sense. Farmers and ranchers deserve to know that they'll be taken care of in this state. Thank you, and I'll gladly answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Mr. Peterson, is it? If you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Putnam. For the record, my name is Hunter Peterson, and I am with Minnesota Farm Bureau. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in support of Senate File 469. As the committee is aware, the Department of Agriculture ran out of funding for wolf and elk depredation payments about halfway through this fiscal year, and this just underscores the high demand for the program and the necessity for increased funding. Farmers and ranchers have limited options for managing wolves due to their protected status under federal law, and actually Minnesota has more wolves than the rest of the lower 48 states combined. And there continues to be ongoing interest in expanding both wolf and elk populations in the state. So on top of the current payment shortfall, if it's the state's position to maintain or grow current wolf and elk populations, then I would say it's only fair that funding for depredation payments is commensurate to ensure farmers and ranchers are fairly compensated for losses of livestock, crops, and fencing. I'd like to thank Senator Johnson for bringing the bill forward, and to you, Mr. Chair, as well. I know you've tried the past couple of years to get some increased funding for this program in the committee's budget, so I would just say keep trying, and I urge the committee's support.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Peterson, if I could ask you to swap seats with Mr. Laurie, because he's got to talk to us a little bit too. Mr. Laurie, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Putnam and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Stu Laurie, Government Relations Director for Minnesota Farmers Union. And on behalf of MFU, I'm glad to share our strong support for Senator Johnson's effort to provide strong funding for the depredation accounts. I'll start by talking wolves. This is a big deal. I think if you got the department's depredation report, there's a line kind of on the northern half of the state. And I got to remember, if I go to any of those counties up there, I need to include this in my report, because if I don't, I'll get a pointed question about it. You know, folks are really concerned about it. You know, from just a personal perspective, in fall of 23, I was up on my dad's farm, and we were driving to go check on the cattle on the side-by-side, and my dad swears he saw a wolf, you know, cross the field. We drove up, and there was a calf that was killed, and you know, hard, obviously. And I told him to go, you know, apply to the state. We have this depredation account. He went and did that. The federal partners went and checked up on it, and they couldn't verify that it was a wolf kill. What was reported to him is that they couldn't find a track. Right? It was a drought-stricken pasture. Cattle weren't even leaving tracks in that pasture. Right? So I tell that story for two reasons. You know, one, because our state and federal partners are indeed doing their due diligence with this fund and verifying those kills. But two, and it's the perception of our members that the need and the impact is higher than the verified you know, kills that'll be reflected in that report. Right? So not an uncommon experience. You know, two other just perspectives on the cattle side. Cattle are worth a lot right now. You had that presentation from Farm Business Management, and livestock is a bright spot in a lot of farms' economic picture. A depredation takes a significant economic and emotional toll. Second, this committee has done a lot to support soil health. The fifth soil health principle is integrating livestock, right? We want livestock out on the land, maintaining perennial pasture, doing all those good things for our soil health, but that increases the likelihood of these interactions with wolves. Second, and importantly on elk, if I make my way up, which I try to do often, to Senator Johnson's district, I'm confident that I'll hear about the elk depredation up there, and this account is hugely important to them. Now starting to hear about it also in Pine and Carlton County with the DNR's proposal to introduce elk in that region as well, and a significant point of contention is whether or not these depredation accounts can shoulder those additional claims. So that's an additional perspective on this proposal as well. So thank you for the opportunity to testify, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laurie. Members, questions or comments? Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Laurie, just regarding your story about the wolf kill assumedly. So what ended up happening there? If the federal agents don't think they can verify that it was a wolf kill, is it then rest on the farmers, or do they pay it as a likely or possible wolf kill? What happens? Because if they don't pay it, your situation, I think you're probably assessing it pretty correctly. What happens? I guess is that kind of an open-ended exposure farmers have to take if it's a question mark without, you don't actually see the wolf eating it or the bite marks and the tracks left behind?
Mr. Lurie.
Mr. Chair, the staff of the Department of Agriculture would be better prepared to speak in general, but my understanding from talking to members is that, yeah, if it's not verified as a wolf kill, then there's no payment for that depredation. This is an account that's set up to manage wolf depredation, and if they can't confirm it, then they don't pay out.
Senator Westrom.
So, Mr. Chair, I mean, that's interesting. I guess I hadn't thought about it before that much, but so basically the tie goes to the farmer. Seems like, I don't know. I guess I have to think about this. If it's clear that it wasn't, it's one thing, but if it's preponderance of evidence, Mr. Chair, it's just interesting. I don't know how you resolve those, because half of them might be and half of them might not be, but none of them are getting covered under the current system. But maybe the department has a more elaborate way they're looking at it. But I guess it's just a good point you're bringing up, that should the assumption be it's not a wolf kill, which is what it sounds like it would be, but not that we have more money to pay for it anyways, but maybe we'll get some. But I think the reason I'm talking about it is I think it at least highlights that it's even that much more of an exposure on farmers, that if there's a question mark about how the calf died or the cow died, they're going to have to eat the bill either way, and the account actually won't help them, as it sounds. And maybe we should modify that standard a little bit.
Thank you, Senator Westrom. I do want to just make two quick interventions for the record. First, we do have a quorum present. And secondly, when asked if there were anyone here from MDA who would know anything about this, Commissioner Chesset just looked around as if he didn't actually work there. I want the record to show that too. Does anyone from MDA, would anyone like to talk about this a little bit? If you could state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mark Abrahamson. I'm the Plant Protection Director at the Department of Agriculture, so we have oversight for both wolf and elk damage programs. And so it's the way it works is when an investigator assesses a suspected wolf kill, it's ultimately up to investigator to say the preponderance of the evidence suggests yes, it's wolf, or no, it isn't wolf. And so it's several things that they'll consider. So the evidence of tracks, the way the animal's been killed, the feeding on the carcass. So it's not one thing that's cut and dry, but a set of factors that they consider. But what we base our payment or non-payment on is, what does the investigator say? Does the investigator say, yes, the preponderance says wolf, or no, it doesn't? And so yes, we do, no, we don't pay.
Thank you, Mr. Abrahamson. Members, any other, Senator Kunish?
Just out of curiosity, where do your claims come from more, from the elk or from wolf? I mean, like, which are more destructive or more claim, where do you get more claims for this kind of compensation?
Mr. Abrahamson.
Thank you for the question. So we get a greater number of claims from wolf depredation, but they are smaller. So it will be a calf, which will be, say, $1,500, maybe $2,000 at this point, versus when we have a claim for elk, if it's in a standing field, that might be $25,000 worth of damage just to that field. So the amounts end up being greater for for elk, but the number of claims we get is greater for wolf.
Senator Kunish.
Are there any other large predatory animals other than wolves that take down or go after cattle here in Minnesota? I just saw a video recently about lynx, lynx sightings here in Minnesota, and I'm wondering if if they are that kind of a predatory animal. And
Mr.
something we
Abramson.
need to worry about.
Mr. Abramson.
I can't answer that question as, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if other animals would kill cattle or not.
Members, any other questions or comments for the testifiers or the author? Seeing none, Senator Johnson, closing statement.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Appreciate your consideration on this. I hope you include this in the final draft of the bill. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Senate File 469 will be laid over for possible inclusion. Our next order of business is Poultry Day on the Hill. Ms. Coles, if you would, please. Let's talk about turkeys. Folks, if you could state your full name for the record and then commence your testimony.
Yeah. So good afternoon, Chair Putnam, members of the committee. My name is Ashley Coles, and I serve Minnesota's turkey industry as the Executive Director for the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association. Today is Poultry Day at the Capitol, so there's a number of you who have had an opportunity to meet with turkey growers from across the state to hear the day-to-day of what they do on their farm and to talk priorities. So we have a whole contingent of turkey growers here if you'd like to chat with folks afterwards as well. As many of you may know, Minnesota leads the nation in turkey production, raising approximately 40 million turkeys annually over around 600 farms. Our industry contributes more than $16 billion to the state's economy and supports over 51,000 jobs across the state. As you all also know, highly pathogenic avian influenza, or HPAI, continues to cause economic strain and emotional hardship for growers and the rural communities that they live in. This virus and the growing complexity to its response continues to dominate headlines, policy discussions across the country, but also here in Minnesota as well. So while HPAI, or highly pathogenic avian influenza, continues to receive ongoing and dominant attention, there's a new virus that many of you may have heard about today called avian metapneumovirus, which arrived in Minnesota in the spring of 2024. So avian metapneumovirus is a highly contagious respiratory virus that presents similar to HPAI, but is not classified as a foreign animal disease, and actually has a larger impact, or has had a larger impact on Minnesota's turkey industry than HiPath has in 2024. For an example, our industry funded a surveillance study starting in April of 2024 and found that avian metapneumovirus was actually found in 100% of our state's flocks in less than 90 days. So because of this disease, it's imperative for agencies like the Board of Animal Health and the Minnesota Department of Agriculture to be high on your priority list when you talk about budget for the rest of this session. I also brought with me, and I hope it's okay, Senator Putnam, a friend, to talk a little bit about some of the impact of HiPath and avian metapneumovirus has had. Thanks.
Ms. Sawatsky, if you would please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Chair Putnam, members of the committee, my name is Erica Sawatsky, and I'm a sixth-generation turkey farmer from Kensington. I also serve as a board director on the Board of Animal Health, and currently am serving as the president. I did get a chance to testify last session. All of us board members were here, so thanks for having me again. Being on the board since 2018 has provided many informative updates in regards to HiPath avian influenza, but nothing truly compares you for having it on your farm. In November of 2023, our worst turkey farming nightmare happened. Over Thanksgiving, we had a barn of very sick turkeys that tested positive for HiPath avian influenza the following day on Black Friday. When I entered the barn around 7 a.m., I heard silence. There's no clucking, no sneezing, literally no movement, no feeders running, no water consumption. There was no activity in my barn. A silent barn is not only sad, but it's truly very eerie. My father, who has farmed for over 40 years, has never seen turkeys as sick as these. For the next 5 hours, my family worked to pick up dead turkeys, but as every hour progressed, the mortality just increased. We would be carrying dead turkeys to the end of the barn and watch more sick turkeys die as we walked by with each pass. The pile of mortality at the end of the barn is one that our farm hasn't seen before. Your heart sinks because you realize seeing turkeys that are sick it just has to be high path. There's no other sickness that it could be. These were our turkeys that we had cared for meticulously from one day until almost market age, and they were now piled in a heap. It's one of the most difficult things a farmer will go through and will mentally burden them as they raise the next flock after restocking their farm. Being a board director on the Board of Animal Health and now having boots on the ground perspective allows me to share my experience with you today. We received our test results just a few hours after submitting them. Our flock was depopulated the next day. The depopulation crew were incredibly sincere, knowing the loss and grief that we were experiencing, and handled the process with the utmost care that they could provide. Our compost piles were built the next day. I had many phone calls the days after from the Minnesota Department of Health, epidemiologists, USDA indemnity technicians, our case manager, our compost expert. All of these people were in contact with me over the weekend and evening hours and throughout the next 10 weeks. Our response people are working around the clock and have been since 2022. My family and I lived through responding to high path for a total of 10 weeks, but these people live it every day. In the last year, we have seen turkey farms infected later into the summer and into the winter. We used to believe that high path was a seasonal virus that followed the spring and fall migration, but it's evident that it's here to stay. This puts a new level of stress on us farmers and our response people. Ashley mentioned avian metapneumovirus today, and I'll touch on that just a little bit. My first flock back after restocking our farm ended up getting pneumovirus. And so for me, that was really, really emotional. Your first flock back, you truly hope that they'll be healthy and you won't run into any issues. And we ended up having pneumovirus on our farm. And at that point, it was in April of 2024 when our industry first started seeing it. So kind of a newer disease and lots of unknowns. So hard to navigate when you're emotional about having 6 turkeys yet again. For us, on our worst day, we lost over 600 turkeys. So if you can imagine trying to pick up all of that mortality, it literally takes hours. And there's been farmers in our industry that have actually lost thousands. So they've been, worse off than I have. But it decimates flocks and farmers' incomes. Continued support of the Board of Animal Health and the Department of Ag needs to continue to be a priority during this session. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today, and at this time, I'll take any questions that you have.
Members, questions, discussion? Senator Kunish.
So that is a really horrifying story. I'm really sorry that your family went through that. Can you explain a little bit how you dispose of the mortality, and then what was the financial blow to your family, to your farm, to your business?
Sure.
Ms. Swansky.
Mr. Chair and Senator Kunish, so the process of disposing of the turkeys, we built the compost piles. So the Board of Animal Health they're called subject matter experts. So they work with you to essentially tell you what you need in terms of the quantity of organic material. So for my flock, that size was about 15,000 turkeys. And I had to bring in total 13 semi-loads of mulch for the organic material. And we as farmers have the opportunity to build those compost piles yourself, but you can also hire a contractor to do that. So that's what my family and I decided to do, was to hire a contractor. That's something that they do. They're experts in it. They have the equipment. Even though we farm and we have the equipment, they have bigger equipment than we do. And I'll be honest, when you have high path on your farm, the amount of people that you need to talk to, the amount of paperwork initially takes up a large majority of your time. So it's, for my family, it's my dad and I that farm full time, and then my husband helps out when he's not teaching high school agriculture. So we're relatively small. So to have the manpower to build those compost piles, it just wasn't feasible. But those compost piles get built, and so the experts, the subject matter experts, help you with that, and then they are composted inside of your barn for about 2 weeks, and you monitor and you take the temperature every day. There's certain parameters that you have to meet, that virus is actually, being deactivated. And then after that, about the 2-week time frame, that pile has to be turned. And so whether or not you do that in your barn, or you choose to move your pile outside, that's kind of up to you. And so we decided to move that pile outside. And then again, more organic material gets put on that pile. For us, by moving that pile outside, and then it has to, compost for another 2 weeks, it gives us the opportunity to start the cleaning process in our barns, because then that's a whole nother process of washing, disinfecting, and taking environmental samples in those barns to make sure that sample or the virus is not in your barn. And then to answer the second part of your question, the financial hit, the indemnity the federal indemnity that is provided to you, I would say is very fair. For us, where your pocketbook as a farmer really hurts is that your downtime of responding and cleaning your farm, you don't get the opportunity to raise that next flock that is up and coming, because your farm is in quarantine and you're shut down essentially. So even though you get indemnity funding for the flock that you have to depopulate, you still are missing income from one entire flock, at least for me personally on my farm. So that's how we're affected.
Senator Kunish.
Sure, and then, so if you're composting the dead turkeys in this, does that kill the pathogen? I mean, does that kill any chance of it being, infecting the rest of your lands or your flock? And then what do you do with that compost? Do you spread it on your fields? Do you just set it off to the side and let it go back to nature? I mean, what happens because that must be a huge amount of material.
Ms. Zawadzki.
Mr. Chair and Senator, so there's, and there may be an expert like Dr. Brian Haefson here that could give you more details, but it has been proven and researched the amount of time that those composts need to sit, and then the temperatures that they need to reach, and the parameters that we need to reach for that virus to be deactivated. All of that is logged every day. As an example, those piles for us reached, on average, it was probably 140 degrees. About 10 days. So that's a pretty hot temperature. But there has been research that has been done, and that is a USDA requirement. And so those are set up based on that sound science that does deactivate the virus. And then your other question, once your compost piles are released from quarantine because you've met all of those temperatures needed for that approximately month time frame, you do have the option to move that compost material off your farm, but that requires a permit from the Board of Animal Health if you're still in quarantine, or you can leave it on your farm. And so for my family and I, we did leave it on our farm for a few months because we were actually going to be spreading it on our fields, stockpiling it later on in the summer. So it was going to be moved, but way far, after we have been released from quarantine.
Okay.
Dr. Haefs is here if you'd like to introduce yourself for the record, and then if you have anything to add.
Yes, thanks. Dr. Brian Haefs, Executive Director for the Board of Animal Health and Minnesota State Veterinarian. The only thing I would add is, so the short answer is yes, it kills the virus, it inactivates it, but it's a very specific procedure. The subject matter experts that Erica referred to are specifically trained to know how to monitor those. We have 2 in Minnesota. spread across all of these affected places. So we're fortunate some states don't have any subject matter experts, but the point I guess I'm making is it's not as simple as we build these piles, let them cook, and,
Sure.
and it's gone. They have to be built correctly, and they're monitored daily to make sure the temperature is rising and maintained at a certain level. We're actually, oddly, Minnesota is known for our ability to compost carcasses, even in the coldest of weather. So we've developed the technique somewhat in Minnesota and been able to share it with other parts of the country. So a weird thing to be proud of, but we were effective at eliminating virus that way.
Well, and compost isn't supposed to smell, so I hope it wasn't a really putrid process. I just have one more question, and that is around the federal indemnity. Is that at risk right now with the changes at the federal government? Have you heard of any of those processes or those dollars being challenged or the faucet turned off or anything like that?
Ms. Coles, I'm guessing that's you.
Yeah, Chair and Senator. So even just this morning, Secretary Brooke Rollins rolled out a 5-part plan for the Trump administration's response to high-path avian influenza. While they may have been in the headlights, may have been specific to eggs, it is inclusive of all poultry. And so indemnity and stamping out of the virus is still very much part of that plan and will continue to be part of that plan, and indemnity is still included in that.
Members of the questions or comments for our Friends for Poultry Day? Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Swatsky, just to follow up on the compost, I mean, ultimately, is there good fertilizer value once it's done the process and decomposed? I'm thinking so, but is that would be one reason that it would be advantageous to spread it on your land once it becomes springtime or
Ms. Swatsky.
Mr. Chair and Senator Westrom, yes, we, at the start of this process, we did really question if there would be any or a high enough nutrient value, there for our, because we also raise corn and soybeans, so we use our turkey manure as fertilizer, and it's a little bit lower than normal, but not really by a whole lot. I mean, there's more value there than what you think. And I think a lot of that goes to that cooking process, and then you're stirring it. And so it does hold the nutrient value fairly well.
Senator Westrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I thought, but I just wanted to confirm while we had the expert here. So, and Mr. Chair, I think you remember, but you and I walked around some of those turkey barns a couple of years ago, and they certainly weren't quiet then. So that's interesting.
That is true. And Ms. Swatsky was an excellent host then and remains an excellent advocate for turkeys. I was glad to spend some turkey time with you there.
And your husband was here yesterday with his FFA group, so good to see them too.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, I think we're moving on to our next order of business. You're welcome to still hang out because there might be some questions given the topic of the next bill, but I got to move over there now.
Senator Putnam, to your bill, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for hearing this bill and giving us an opportunity to talk about this issue. I really don't have a whole lot to add to what we've just heard from the last 10 minutes, other than one very basic observation, which is that this is not just an economic issue, it's a human issue. When we think about the consequences on the turkey farmers and the people who work in poultry of the spread of some of these diseases and the dangers that they represent, it's something we have an economic opportunity to intervene in a human crisis, which is we could put some money into this and we could make it so that Ms. Swatsky doesn't have this situation happen again. So the bill that we have before us today appropriates resources to a program to provide grants to prevent the spread of avian influenza. Mr. Chair, I do have the A1 author amendment.
Sure. Would you like to, and I believe that everybody should have that A1 amendment. Would you like to speak to the A1 amendment?
It's very straightforward, just clarifying one sentence and then tweaking the enactment date.
Okay, Senator Putnam moves the A1 amendment. All in favor of the A1 amendment, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? A1 amendment is adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Again, this bill is basically just puts resources in a place that we already have put them and where we know that they've been effective. Just moments ago, I saw a bit of information from our friends at the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association that how incredibly impactful our turkey laser program was just last year. You compare our incidence of unhealth in our turkey population with other states. We intervened, we slowed it down, we helped a lot. Here's our chance to do that again. And that's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Do you believe, do you have a testify or two?
Ms. Coles is here to
Ms. Coles, would you
tell us
like
a
to
little bit more.
identify yourself yet again one more time and then begin your testimony?
Absolutely. So Ashley Coles, I serve as the Executive Director for the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association, and here to testify in favor of Senate File 1839. Again, I don't necessarily have a lot to add to what you guys just heard in regards to the success of the program in the last year. We have had multiple conversations about the number of turkey lasers that have been installed in the state of Minnesota. Since 2023 is just over 100 lasers. So while some of these predate last year's grant, a significant number of them are post last year's grant. And to put some data behind the comment that Senator Putnam just made about the numbers and how Minnesota has stayed steady. So in 2022, nationally, there's about 57 million birds impacted by high path. In Minnesota, there's about 4 million turkeys of that number. In 2023, that number dropped down to just over 20 million, and Minnesota dropped down to 1.1 million in just turkeys. Unfortunately, in 2024, nationally, they bumped up to about 50 million birds impacted, and Minnesota further reduced again to right around 1 million turkeys impacted. And so, when you talk about the response to highly pathogenic avian influenza, there's Dr. Hafe said when he testified here previously, but others, Minnesota sets the gold standard as far as biosecurity and the way that we respond to things. And we've also noted that biosecurity alone cannot successfully prevent highly pathogenic avian influenza from entering into barns. And so different interventions like these turkey lasers, and I think we have a picture, Nick, I don't know if you can put that up there. That turkey lasers serve as a way to layer on top of gold standard robust biosecurity measures. The problem when it comes to some of these, and the reasoning we ask for the grant, is that we are competing with airports and vineyards and whatnot for this technology, and to prove that it works, right? It keeps birds off of runways, and it keeps birds off of turkey barns, which are the primary vector for high-path avian influenza. So here's an example of one of our growers' turkey lasers. It's good to put a visual in people's mind, because when we talk about turkey lasers, their minds go wild of what these could look like and what these could do. And so the picture that you see up here, it's obviously not moving. These lasers are continually moving and prevent birds from landing and actually deter them from flying over it completely. And so this is just an example of what a turkey laser looks like. It's not a turkey or a laser held by a turkey. It's not a laser pointing at birds, but rather a laser that moves around super slow around the barns in a very irregular pattern.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Coles. Members, any questions here for testifier? Senator Kunesh.
Thanks. How much does a laser like that cost? And do you need one per barn? So if you have more than one turkey barn, do you need more than one? And does it come in different colors? Does it strobe? I mean, like, what do we got here?
Ms. Coles.
Yeah, senators. So currently, there's some science behind, green is the only color, unfortunately, that these come in, so you don't get to, right.
Dance party at the turkey barn.
There you go. Yeah, and typically for a turkey barn of that size that you see up there, it's just because of the size of the turkey barn, and you see those grain bins next to it that serve as kind of a blockage for some of the light on occasion. You do need 2 per barn, and they run roughly between $17,000 to $20,000 per laser. So they can be cost prohibitive, especially as you guys have heard the financial hardship that the turkey industry has been under for the past number of years. So again, another justification behind the grant to kind of help pay for some of these interventions like lasers. Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none. Senator Putnam, any last comments?
Thank you for the chance to talk to this. Thanks to Ms. Cole and to all of our friends at the Minnesota Turkey Growers Association who are here with us today. It's their advocacy that brought the concept of turkey lasers to us. And thanks to us for actually making this resource available in the past, because as you just heard, it's been incredibly successful and has actually done a lot of good. But also ultimate thanks to our friends at MDA. Because they're the ones who actually orchestrate this program. This is a sign of what happens when government knows what's going on. It can help, and we did that, so let's keep doing it.
All right, thank you, Senator Putnam. Senate File 1839 as amended will be laid over for possible inclusion.
The button, I guess.
Okay, folks, our next order of business is a presentation from our friends at Cellucomp. Following that, we will hear about a couple bills that deal with the similar issue from our friend Senator Lang. So if we could, friends from Cellucomp, if you could, please state your full name for the record and commence your testimony when you're ready.
Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chair and members, for not only hearing the bill today, but you know, the discussions we've had both with yourself, Senator Friend, Senator Pratt, in trying to form this bill and trying to come together. Actually, we have a couple bills, have a couple modes that we think the committee may have a chance of funding this this grant program. So a little bit of introduction, I think, is probably in order, and just to let the committee know what the heck we're talking about. So I was approached, actually, not by these gentlemen, but by a local businessman that had invested in a company that he started talking to me about. And it was very interesting to me at the time, Mr. Chair, because I happen to live in an area that has sugar beets, a vast amount of sugar beets, and there's a byproduct from these sugar beets. It's a fibrous beet pulp. Beet pulp is what we call it. These two gentlemen sitting next to me have developed a process to turn beet pulp into a pretty amazing product. That local businessman said, hey, I've invested in this company. You might want to look at these guys. You might want to give them a chance to talk to you. So through the last couple of years, really, I think we had it last year. It was a little premature when we first started talking about it, but we've gotten to the point now where I think we're, as a state, ready for this. But here's what they do, is they take that beet pulp and they turn it into a product that is a PFAS alternative, a safer PFAS alternative. That is, it's very exciting to me. I think these two gentlemen sitting next to me probably don't know the demand that they're going to probably see in the next couple of years, but I don't know how the process works. I just know that it's a great idea, and you have a little bit of swag on your counter in front of you. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it over to either Christian or Chris, whoever would like to start.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and senators, committee members. My name is Christian Kemp-Griffin, and I'm the CEO of Cellucomp, and I'm here with Chris Plotz, who's the head of the North American organization. So I'd like to take time to introduce Cellucomp to you. Cellucomp is a company, and we believe very adamantly about material change for good, and that really means significant change with our materials for the good of people, planet, and profit, and from now on. So maybe we go to the next slide, and I can describe. So what you see here and what we know is there is a massive problem in packaging today, both in plastic and when plastic isn't used for barrier PFAS alternatives. And we just can't continue to do this. This is very harmful to both to people, to animals, and to the environment. And so we've decided that we've got an alternative for this. So here's the dilemma. The dilemma is that there is a desire to replace the PFAS in plastic and have something that's recyclable, compostable, and biodegradable. Fiber is a natural choice as an alternative, but the problem with fiber is that when it's wet, it gets weak, and it's very porous. So it actually can't perform a lot of the barrier that is needed. And this is where we come in with our solution. So what we've done is we've exactly as Senator Lang said, is we take, after the sugar process, we take the sugar beet pulp, we go into the cell wall structure, and we extract the cellulose from the cell wall structure, getting rid of some of the hemicellulose and pectins, and we make a product called Curran. So in fact, we can use all kinds of root vegetables, but we've chosen sugar beet pulp as the way to scale this business. So Curran does two things. One, and you have a bottle in front of you, it goes into the actual substrate itself. So you can mix it with all kinds of different ag waste or ag byproducts or wood pulp. And there what it does is it strengthens the substrate and it closes the porosity. In addition to that, we put the fiber into specific coatings, and when you put the coatings onto the substrate, there you have the full barrier packaging that's available for the market, for grease, for water, and for oxygen. So we believe that you can make absolutely anything could be packaged using fiber instead of using even glass or metals or plastic. We work with all kinds of people in the value chain, so that's people who make materials themselves, so we could sell our product to other coating materials, people who make coatings. We could sell them to people who develop machines and need recipes for those machines, to converters and to eventual brands as well. So we've already started to develop our market. You can see here, this is at PAC Expo. We have built a value chain of clients that are ready to use this product and get it out on the market. And now what we need to do is develop the appropriate capacity in order to fill this market. So we have come to Minnesota. And the reason we've come to Minnesota is, and I've spent quite a lot of time going around and looking at sugar beet operations all around the world as it happens. And Minnesota is a home that we've chosen for key reasons. One is you have a lot of sugar beet here and a lot of sugar beet pulp, but very specifically, you run your factories here for 9 months out of the year, and everywhere else, it's 3 months out of the year. And this allows us to get fresh pulp available throughout the year. It's a huge advantage because you freeze your sugar beets. And this allows us to have many synergies, not only with the making of our product, but also with our neighbors around. So we have spent time with the local farmers, with AURI, with the University of Minnesota, a lot of also brands and converters in this market here in Minnesota as well, because our objective is to fill the value chain as much locally within the state as possible. So we picked a site in Renville. Renville is where Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative is. So we will be transporting pulp less than a mile from the location to our location where we'll be able to produce our materials. And this is a really interesting circular story as well. So what happens is the sugar beet comes out of the ground. A lot of you will know this. It produces sugar on the one hand, produces pulp on the other hand. Obviously, the sugar gets packaged and sent as sugar. We build the Curran, and then we produce this waste stream as well from our process, and that waste stream can go into 3 different things: animal feed, fertilizer, and convert it into biogas. In fact, we produce 7 times the amount of energy from our waste stream that we need to run our factory. So there's a big opportunity to share energy as well. And our current product, if you look at a full circular story, can go into papers, and these papers can be used to make sugar bags, which completes the full cycle. So we are drastically planning to move the development of our product. We started in the lab. We've moved to a demo product. We now, this year, have decided to start the production of our materials. So we're starting to bring some equipment in, and it's what we call our starter kit here. And what we need to do is expand this out into a full-fledged 2,800 ton factory. But with that, we will draw up to 80, over a 7-year period, plan to draw 80,000 tons of beet pulp and produce 10,000 tons of our product. So in general, we believe that this can really strengthen Minnesota's position as a leader in bio-based manufacturing. We have a huge global reach that can go out to customers in the U.S., well, locally in the U.S., in Europe, and in Asia as well. There's a huge benefit to the local value chain. We're supporting all the cooperative farmers in the area, and of course, we will be hiring staff not only in the plant itself, but setting up the headquarters in Minnesota. And as a matter of fact, we already have the company set up in Minnesota. So we're going to use a lot of the byproduct. We have very, very low carbon emissions because we're not moving product. We're right next to the sugar beet plant. And of course, we are going to have renewable energy as part of this plan as well, and eliminate PFAS, which of course has some historical significance in this state. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm willing to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kemp Griffin. My first question, I think, is for Senator Lang. The two bills that we have before us, my quick understanding is that the distinction is primarily one is a named appropriation and the other one sets up a grant to which companies like Cellucomp could apply. Is that accurate?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That is absolutely accurate. And I do actually have an amendment for 302 that we should probably try and get passed before.
Sure, let's do that and get that done. Could you tell us a little bit about that real quick?
So in drafting of the bill, there was just, I'd call it a drafting error more or less about where the money would be directed. Instead of the department as a whole, it would be directed to the Commissioner of Ag.
Members, everyone had a chance to look at this? We're just changing something very, very simple, and this is in Senate File 302. Any discussion, questions? All in favor of the A2 amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. The amendment is passed. Thank you for that, Senator Lang. My next sort of follow-up question on the relationship between the two bills is, are there other people who are doing this work? Maybe this is for Mr. Kemp Griffin. Are there lots of other corporations who are experimenting? I'm assuming that the technology you are employing is proprietary, but are there other people who are experimenting with these kinds of agricultural-related substitutes for PFAS?
As it happens, most of the people who are doing similar fibers are coming from wood fibers, but there's absolutely no one who's doing this microfibrillated cellulose, which is our fiber product from ag by co-product streams.
And Mr. Chair, if between the two bills, realistically, when we looked at the product that they were going to be producing and how the state of Minnesota could be a help to this process, we looked to the bioincentive program. And if you remember in the past, the bioincentive program was structured in such a way that it did not stop anybody from continuing a similar process, but it definitely did, well, it leaned into the process that we intended, not only from the legislature, but from an economic standpoint. So the file 304, if you could look at that, this grant process is a post facto grant. So it allows the Cellucomp company or a company that would qualify under the grant parameters, which are, we talked about it quite a bit with the department on what the right and left limits of what that grant process should look like, and not to exclude any other company from being able to apply to the grant. The straight appropriation bill is just that. We did look at the bioincentive program. We've looked at the MPCA has grant programs for PFAS replacement. The DEED, DOLLY, we're kind of working all angles on this one. And we have had really significant conversations with the Department of Ag as well. The commissioner has, expressed, sincere interest in what we're doing here. So the grant is really after they start producing. They get paid back after a certain, I think it's all in here, but realistically, they have to start producing before they can qualify for any of this grant in the upcoming years. So, yeah, the bills are actually rather simple, and we're following structure that exists right now, but they don't really qualify underneath the bioincentive program. So this is why we're trying to establish this.
Thank you for that explanation, Senator Lang. We do have one more testifier. I think we might bring up Ms. Stark real quickly to maybe talk through her perspective on the issue, and then we'll return to member questions.
Chair Chair Putnam, members of the committee, I'm Ivana Stark, State Director of Clean Water Action Minnesota. I'm here on behalf of our tens of thousands of members to ensure that our water is drinkable, swimmable, and fishable for generations to come. And we are really grateful for the opportunity to share our enthusiasm for this work. We have learned a lot about PFAS in the last few years, and I'm really proud of how quickly Minnesota has responded to the threat to our health and our water. One of the arguments we made over and over while working to pass Amara's law was that sustainability and PFAS-free alternatives can be very profitable for Minnesota and create jobs. We challenged businesses to put their money where their mouth was and stop spending money on pushing to continue to pollute, but rather to spend on innovation. So now that there's this inspiration to do that, we're here to make good on our word and encourage creative out-of-the-box approaches such as this grant program for safer PFAS-free alternatives, and that safer word is really important. In some cases, we may even be able to hit two birds with one stone and reduce plastic while moving away from PFAS. Microplastics and PFAS are impacting agriculture in negative ways. The chemicals in the plastics that microplastics slough off of stick with the microplastics as they enter the environment and eventually our bodies. Farms with private wells are at even greater risk for exposure, making prevention all that more important. PFAS and the chemicals and microplastics are linked to an array of negative health impacts, and we see babies born with these chemicals in them through exposure through cord blood and then eventually breast milk after birth. Microplastics and PFAS are found in the brain, sperm, and lungs. It might surprise you to know that I grew up on my grandparents' farm outside of Albert Lea, and I was driving a tractor by the time I was 6. So I know that agriculture in Minnesota is innovative and it cares about the environment. By offering grants to inspire innovation to businesses and creative thinkers, the sky becomes the limit for our farmers as new collaborative relationships are developed in order to move Minnesota towards a more sustainable and healthier future. We see this with Senate File 302 and 304 and the opportunity to turn sugar beet pulp into a safer PFAS-free alternative. So we are grateful to Senator Lang for bringing this grant idea forward, and we urge your support. This is a wise investment to protect the future of the integrity of both our water and the soil and countless families who farm across our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stark. Now we'll turn to member questions and comments. Senator Westrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple simple questions, but so this bottle that you've shared with us, this is not made out of PFAS. It's made out of this new process you're discussing with us, and that's much more environmentally friendly. Is that the conclusion?
Yeah,
Mr. Kemp Griffin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator. Yes, this particular bottle, okay, so the idea is that we would sell our product to a lot of converters to make paper, to make trays, to make a wide variety of products. So our current material, which is derived from sugar beet pulp, could be an additive in many, many different circumstances, anything from coffee capsules, etc. This particular bottle, yes, does include the fiber. It also includes bamboo, as it happens. So this particular bottle happens to have bamboo, but we could mix it with other things as well. In addition to this, we have our reef coating on it, so that allows you to drink water from it. So it is much safer because there's no PFAS anywhere in the whole bottle. And of course, there's no plastic in it either, because typically you would be drinking from a plastic bottle, and the idea is to move it to fiber-based, because this can now go into the fiber recycling or the paper recycling stream, and this can be converted into an Amazon box or something like that down the road.
So, Mr. Chair, you're saying this is not plastic. It feels plastic.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, just to answer that, what's incredible about this, what's happening now, so it's the very same technology that will make an egg carton today, okay, which is wet molded technology. But if you know, with egg cartons, that paper is sort of porous and it's not as smooth.
Right.
But as soon as you take that similar kind of process and you have machines that have much stronger hydraulic presses and squeeze all the water out, you're able to get a really strong smoothness from the surface. This is in part what our fibers are doing to help that smoothness, but then you're able to make actually beautiful objects from that. And if you don't get the smooth surface, you can't put the coating on it because the coating will then sink into the product as opposed to resting on the product. And if you want to have thin coatings but give the barrier, then it needs to sit on top. And it's really this combination of working on the substrate and the coating which is critical.
So, Mr. Chair,
Senator Westrom.
very intriguing. So what you're saying is this coating, and that coating is not made out of PFAS? Because a lot of times, I understand a lot of the coatings we have in bottles and et cetera is PFAS, and so that's somewhere where you are being told it's not good for you. If what I understood is you're saying there's a coating, what's that coating made out of? But then below that's the egg carton modified, if you will.
Yeah.
And then this will hold water long-term, or will it disintegrate eventually?
Mr. Kim Griffin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Senator. The coating itself has absolutely no PFAS in it, okay? Typically what has happened is if you've had paper substrates, in order for nothing to go through that paper substrate, you would mix PFAS in amongst the pulp, within the pulp. That would be a typical way to do it. The other way to do it would be to put a plastic film on top of the paper for the barrier. So in this particular case, we have neither the plastic film nor the PFAS in the pulp.
Senator Westrom.
So Mr. Chair, just very, very intriguing. It seems like you're on cutting edge, but there must be others that are doing something similar. I guess two questions I'll mix into one. I think it's the end. The cost, is it a lot more expensive than PFAS? And is that where the dilemma is of getting this developed? And two, does it have to be beet pulp? And if we do we have enough beet pulp? I just talked to cattle farmers yesterday, and many of them talk about how they've used beet pulp from the beet plants for feeding their cattle nowadays. And so are we creating a competitive product and now we're going to be short of beet pulp too? Just the financial part, if you can touch on all that, that'd be helpful.
Mr. Kim Griffin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator. Maybe I'll answer the last question first. With the plant that we want to build now, just for the Southern Minnesota Beet Sugar Cooperative, we will be less than 1% of the beet pulp that comes out of their operation. So it's a very, very small portion. Of course, you know there's American Crystal. There's also Mindac growers that are in Minnesota as well. So there is plenty of beet pulp around. This will be a very small portion. In terms of cost, you have to understand that what we're doing is we're not actually we are going to be cost competitive because we are cost competitive with PFAS, but it's not a straight replacement, if you will. So you have to think of it in a very different way. It's not a straight replacement for just pumping PFAS in and out because we have the coating and the material inside. But you just have to know that in order to get this bottle done, we're only 2 to 3% of the bottle to give the benefit that you need. So it's very competitive to paper. Paper is a big industry that produces a lot of things, and so it's a competitive product.
Senator Westrom.
Mr. Chair, just on the cost, do you have any cost comparisons? I mean, what would this bottle cost if it was your traditional plastic? And what does it cost for you, or say this is bigger, like a water, like my water bottle here, something similar size. I don't know what the water bottles cost. They're maybe a couple pennies a piece. I don't know, but just give us a comparison if you have any. That'd be kind of interesting, I think.
Yeah, short term, it will cost more. There's no question. It'll be about double the cost of the plastic bottle. But long term, it will scale up. All the manufacturers, bottle manufacturers, have the technology to scale this up. And when it gets to scale, it should be competitive.
Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Lang. We heard this in Jobs as well. I think that this is a really, really good bill. I love ideas like this that help the environment. They're in Minnesota, they use stuff that we already have, creates jobs, another industry. I'm all for bringing more manufacturing to Minnesota. Love all of it. And then I was thinking about something as Senator Westrom was talking, because I know Senator Seeberger and I care a lot about PFAS, and PFAS isn't just about making, the environment healthy, but what we put into our bodies too. And so I think, when I look at this too, and yes, it is better for the environment, but it is also a much healthier alternative for just people in general. And PFAS does enormously damaging things to a human body. And so I think, whenever we can have a win-win where Senator Lang's district can create more jobs, bring in more manufacturing, we're doing something good for the environment, but also making people healthy, it's just such a win-win. So the only thing I'm surprised about is that Senator Kupek isn't mad that they're not doing sugar beet stuff in Moorhead. So you guys can fight that out later, but thanks.
He left for a reason.
Well, actually, we know the folks in Moorhead and American Crystal. They're great partners with us. They might end up being customers from us for a few things.
Well, thank you. I think, Senator Guston, you raised a really important point, because sometimes when we think of the cost of things, we think of the immediate cost and not the long-term good. Because, clearly we can't factor in the cost of the health consequences of PFAS into the production of this, but that still is something that we're saving. And I also want to say this is just a fascinating model. It just feels interesting. Folks, I'm just going to leave it here so members of the audience can come out here and check it out, because it's a really interesting weight to it, heft to it.
Yeah, that's one of our customers, and they make beautiful things. In fact, they make some of the product for Apple now as well. So when you get your iPhone that's in the molded fiber, it used to be plastic, it's now fiber.
Oh, nice throw.
That's political cooperation right there. But I do hope everyone gets a chance to take a look at the bottom. Senator Kunesh.
So Senator Lang or any of you, can you tell us how many employees this is that you employ, and how have you grown that employee pool in the areas? And I think you want to expand to Renville. What does that look like?
Mr. Kemp-Griffin, or Senator Lang, I'm sorry.
So thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Kunesh. We did have the Jobs Committee in particular. I think originally it was 24 jobs total, 17 in the factory. So
19,
in my neck of the woods, that's pretty substantial. We live in a county of 10,000, so a manufacturing facility that adds 20 plus jobs is significant. The thing that we did talk about in jobs as well is that it is more than that. That is the production, but it also, you provide an additional impact to the sugar beet co-op for sure. The 200 plus people that own that sugar beet co-op, we talked in jobs, and I know we got kind of off track in there a little bit, but we did talk about the fact that Renville County in the state of Minnesota, because of the application process of fertilizers over the last 50 years, has been so good that there is not PFAS in the ground. So in other states there are. As those sugar beets go through the process and they eventually become a product like this, or sugar, or whatever it may be, it's a much cleaner process. And Cellucomp has said that is one of our determining factors also on why we want to be there, as far as providing that economic impact. So I don't know. I think there's more here than possibly we are going to be able to talk about today. I think as this process goes forward and they develop not only one or many products, develop their manufacturing facility, and once consumers see it, once manufacturers of products like that bottle see this product and start using it, and it becomes a standard operating procedure on how they produce their product, I think that this becomes something much bigger than what even this grant process is. And I don't know, it's pretty exciting, I think. I'm looking forward to it. So,
Senator Kunesh?
Sure. So I see that Cellucomp is a Scottish-based company. And so my two questions. Are you marketing just in the United States? Is this an international market? And if it is international, do you know, or are you concerned about any effects on some of the tariffs that are being imposed?
It's a good question. So we are a Scottish-based company. We also have a company based in Minnesota now as well. Part of what we want to do is, what's really exciting about this project, it's going to be the first commercial factory in the U.S. We've chosen the U.S., we've chosen the state of Minnesota. Obviously, as we grow down the road, that could be an expansion to this plant where we are. Or if we need to, that's a business decision, we maybe need to build some factories in other locations in Europe and so on. But we don't see any restriction. We'd like to start as local as possible and grow out from this plant. Because it makes sense. When we're shipping product, we can ship it close by, that's better. This is a really interesting area from a customer point of view as well, because you have paper manufacturers here. You have some people like Liberty Paper who takes recycled goods and makes products. You have Sappi in Wisconsin nearby is one of the biggest paper producers. And then as you go towards the Chicago area, still relatively close, is where a lot of the food packaging businesses are. So it's an ideal location for us to be in for that reason.
Senator Kunish.
Thank you.
Senator Kupek.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I stepped out for 1 second to work on some legislation with Senator Dames. So in case I did, first of all, I swear sugar beets are like this thing that every time you think you figured it all out, there's something else that comes out of it. I mean, we're putting it on roads to keep ice off. There's all kinds of fascinating things about sugar beets. And so I'm sorry if I missed this when I just stepped away for a second. So in terms of when you are done with this bottle, is it, because I'm assuming, is it just biodegradable? Does it break down? And what's like the breakdown time of this? Or is it some way recyclable? Or what's the end use of this little bottle?
Yeah, the primary end use, Mr. Chair and Senator, the primary end use would be to recycle it. That would be the best. If we can put it into something and it gets put back in, that's good. You should note as well that people who are recycling paper get all kinds of different qualities that come in, and to produce a standard quality going out is hard, and our product actually acts as an equalizer for people producing recycled product. So you could imagine down the road that this becomes something that gets recycled, and you need to tip off with a bit more of the fiber to make the output standard. So the idea is to recycle it. Otherwise, it's biodegradable. It's not home compostable, like right away, okay? Because if you've got anything that is going to be resistant to water vapor barrier, which is key if you're going to hold water or ketchup or anything, then it's not something that can disappear immediately. Otherwise, it wouldn't hold what you have in the first place. This is really where the science comes in, where it's very, very hard to get that right balance between it being biodegradable, but something that you can, that will do the job, essentially.
And Mr. Chair, I've asked that same question. Because Christian and Chris both have said, well, these are, one-time use bottles, but he also mentioned the fact that he's using a water bottle on his tennis match over and over and over. So I think it has some durability more than one-time use. I'd be curious, as now that you all have one, fill it up with water and see how long it lasts.
Nick's got coffee in it right now,
Yeah.
and it's doing fine.
There you go.
If I may, I would love these bottles. The reason that we put these bottles in this size is the idea is that this could go to conferences, this could go to events. So you can imagine big stadium events where people are handing out, or a sales event for a company where they're handing out these bottles. They get collected at the end, and they get recycled. So you have your bottle for the day, you fill it with tap water, whatever. And this is a perfect market that can be done even here. There are lots of areas. Why not have the Senate full of these bottles instead of plastic bottles when people come?
Senator Kupek.
So you'd be our first customer.
Senator Kupek. Just one quick question. Can they be translucent or transparent, or are they're always going to be?
No.
Just curious.
No.
Senator Seeberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'm excited to see a grant proposal for PFAS alternatives, and thank you, Senator Lang, for your work on this. As we all know, and as Senator Gustafson pointed out, PFAS is a big problem in my district and something that I've been dealing with for a really, really long time. And it's on the minds of everyone who lives in my district. So I'm glad to see that we are talking about grants for PFAS alternatives, alternatives to plastics. PFAS and plastics have been sort of a nemesis of mine for a really long time. And in 2023, I saw and I think it's a photo is like this in the presentation, of just the plastic waste and plastic bottle waste, and kind of a flotilla of plastic bottles that had washed up on the shore. And I made a commitment to myself that I would not use a single-use plastic beverage bottle for a year, and see if I could do it and see how hard it was. And now I'm in year 2 of never using one single-use beverage bottle, and it's pretty easy. I have my water bottle here that I fill up. There's drinking fountains. I remember as a kid, we didn't buy plastic bottles of water. We used drinking fountains, and we all seem to survive just fine. So I've been on this mission, and anything that we can use to get rid of plastic and our use on dependence on single-use plastics is something that's really, really appealing to me. I'd be interested in learning more about this. You know, the questions, is it compostable, is it reusable, is it recyclable? Those are all good questions. I would hate to see something like this become our next flotilla of plastic, bottles, but certainly it's encouraging to see that folks are reaching out and trying to come up with different ideas that doesn't lead to the infiltration of plastics and PFAS in our environment. So looking at Senate File 304, this is a great idea. I love that it's Minnesota, and I'm so proud that we're trying to be a leader here in looking at alternatives to PFAS and plastics.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Steenberger. Members, Senator Dornick, you're the last one to go. We hit 1,000 if you've got a comment.
Mr. Chair, yeah, thanks. I appreciate put me on the spot. My daughter just texted me. I had to talk to her for a while. But anyways, the great product. Appreciate the bill, Senator Lang. And I'm too amazed at the resilience of all the products that we have in agriculture and how agriculture comes to the rescue again. So here in ag, just more products to help with the PFAS problem. So thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for picking Minnesota, and welcome to Minnesota.
Thank you, Senator Dornick. Sorry about that. Members, any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Senator Lang, do you have any closing comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members, again, the support prior to today and then the robust discussion. I really appreciate it. I think we have an opportunity here to not only promote business and the economic development of the state and these guys sitting next to me, but also I think we're really starting to just hit the very pinpoint of solving a problem that has been in the headlines in the state of Minnesota for several years, and we've had advocates on both sides of the aisle trying to look at this problem, and this is one step towards the end of it. So with that, I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Senator Lang, for prior conversations about this issue, for preparing these bills and for bringing them to us today. Both will be held over for possible inclusion. Senate File 304 will be held over for possible inclusion, and Senate File 302 will also be held over for possible inclusion. Senator Lang, some of us were actually talking about this a little bit, in that you've been here a while, so you know that, of course, the ag jurisdiction gets all the money. But there might be other places where this worthy project could find resources as well. Mm-hmm. But I do want to say that I think the committee as a whole was very impressed, and we're really intrigued to see where this goes. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members, that's the end of our business for today. Just a quick forecast of what's happening. On Monday, we will be again dealing with Veterans Affairs, Veterans and Military Affairs. We had to switch around the schedule a little bit to get some stuff in. So we'll be talking about a program to do Meals on Wheels for Greater Minnesota, and we'll talk about sort of some predatory behavior around veterans benefits. On Wednesday, when we come back, it will be an Ag Day again, and we're going to be talking about water and fertilizer. issues that are related to that, and have a series of bills to have that discussion. There being no further order, business in front of the committee, we are adjourned.